The fluorescent lights hummed above me like dying insects, casting everything in the emergency room waiting area a sickly yellow-green. I sat hunched in the corner chair, my phone clutched between trembling fingers, watching the battery percentage drop to 3%. The plastic seat stuck to the back of my thighs through my thin cotton dress. The same dress I'd worn for 2 days straight because I hadn't been home, hadn't slept, hadn't eaten anything but stale vending machine crackers that now sat like rocks in my stomach. My daughter was somewhere beyond those double doors, Emma, 6 months old, fighting a fever that had spiked to 104 degrees in the middle of the night. The nurses had rushed her back an hour ago, and I'd been sitting here ever since, trying not to think about the credit card they'd declined at the registration desk. Trying not to remember the look the intake clerk gave me, that particular blend of pity and judgment reserved for young mothers who show up at county hospitals in the middle of the night with no insurance and overdraft notices on their bank apps. The smell of antiseptic mixed with burnt coffee and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. It clung to everything, this place. I pressed my palms against my eyes, felt the grit of exhaustion there, the salt of tears I couldn't afford to shed. Not here. Not where people could see how close I was to shattering. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jake. Where are you? Not is Emma okay? Not do you need help? Just those 3 letters dripping with accusation, as if I'd orchestrated this emergency to inconvenience him. As if his daughter wasn't lying in some examination room with an IV in her tiny arm, because I couldn't afford the kind of pediatrician who made house calls. I should have texted my friend Sarah. She'd offered to be my emergency contact a dozen times. But Sarah had her own problems. 3 kids, a husband who worked nights, a life that didn't have room for my crisis at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. My fingers moved across the screen, muscle memory more than conscious thought. The contacts list swam in my vision, exhaustion making the names blur together. I found what I thought was Sarah's name and typed quickly before my phone could die completely. Emma's in the ER. High fever. I'm scared. They won't tell me anything, and I'm alone. Please. I hit send as the screen went black. 1% to 0 in an instant. The phone died in my hand, and I sat there staring at the dark glass, seeing my own reflection ghosted there, hollow-eyed, hair pulled back in a messy knot, a stain on my collar that might have been baby formula or my own sweat. I looked exactly like what I was. A 23-year-old single mother who'd made every wrong choice in the book and was now watching those choices come due. Ms. Reeves? A nurse appeared through the double doors, her scrubs patterned with teddy bears that seemed obscene given the circumstances. Emma's responding to the IV fluids. The doctor wants to run a few more tests, but her fever's coming down. The relief hit me so hard I nearly vomited. Can I see her? In a few minutes. We're just finishing up. She hesitated, her expression softening. Is there someone we can call? You look like you could use some support. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. She squeezed my shoulder, brief, professional, kind, and disappeared back through those doors. I don't know how long I sat there. Time moved strangely in that waiting room, measured only by the rotation of faces in other chairs, other people's emergencies eclipsing mine. A man came in holding his arm at an odd angle. A teenager threw up in a trash can while her mother held her hair. Life continued its messy, painful march forward, and I was just another casualty in the procession. The automatic doors at the entrance hissed open. I barely registered it at first. Just another ambulance crew, maybe, or another desperate soul seeking salvation in this fluorescent purgatory. But something made me look up, some shift in the air pressure, or maybe the sudden silence that fell over the waiting room like a held breath. 3 men walked in. No, that wasn't right. 2 men walked. The third one commanded space, owned it, made everyone and everything else seem like background scenery in whatever film he was starring in. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself, didn't need to rush or posture or prove. The automatic doors might as well have been palace gates opening for royalty. He wore all black. Not the trendy kind of black you saw on college students trying to look edgy, but the expensive kind, a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, tailored so precisely it looked like it had been painted onto his frame. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines, young, maybe early 30s, but carrying himself with the gravity of someone much older. The two men flanking him were clearly security. One built like a linebacker, the other lean and watchful, both of them scanning the room with eyes that cataloged threats and exits in the same sweeping glance. They positioned themselves near the entrance as the man in black stopped at the registration desk. He didn't wait in line. The clerk who'd given me that pitying look an hour ago now stumbled over herself to help him, her demeanor transformed entirely. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Of course, Mr. Marchetti." Marchetti. The name drifted through the waiting room like smoke, and I watched people's reactions ripple outward. Recognition, fear, excitement, the careful, studied ignorance of those who knew better than to stare. My mind scrambled to place it, that name, but came up empty. Just another rich man in a city full of them, probably. Someone used to getting what he wanted, when he wanted it. He turned from the desk, and for one disorienting second, his gaze swept across the room and landed on me, dark eyes. The kind of dark that wasn't just brown, but something deeper, older, holding shadows that had nothing to do with the fluorescent lighting. They locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch, made every nerve ending in my body suddenly aware of his presence even though he stood 30 feet away. Then his attention moved on, dismissing me as easily as he'd found me, and I could breathe again. "Mr. Marchetti, this way, please." A doctor appeared, not one of the residents who'd been handling the overflow, but someone older, someone who'd clearly been pulled from wherever important doctors went at 3 a.m. "We have a private room ready." They disappeared through a different set of doors, the ones marked authorized personnel only, and the waiting room seemed to exhale collectively. Conversations resumed. The teenager threw up again. Life went back to being ordinarily terrible instead of extraordinarily tense. I tried to focus on Emma, on waiting for my turn to see her, but my mind kept circling back to those few seconds of eye contact. The weight of it. Like being seen and catalogued and filed away for later reference, all in the span of a heartbeat. My phone remained dead in my lap. I'd forgotten about the text I'd sent, about Sarah, about everything except the sick twist of worry in my gut, and the bone-deep exhaustion that made the plastic chair feel almost comfortable. "Ms. Reeves?" The teddy bear nurse again. "You can see Emma now." I followed her through the double doors on legs that didn't quite feel attached to my body. Emma lay in a pediatric examination room, dwarfed by the adult-sized bed, an IV taped to her tiny hand, but her eyes were open, alert. She saw me, and made that little sound, not quite crying, but close. And I was beside her in an instant, stroking her feverish forehead, whispering nonsense comfort. "The fever's down to 101, the nurse said. "Still elevated, but much better. The doctor wants to admit her overnight for observation just to be safe. I can't—" The words stuck in my throat. "My insurance? We'll work it out." She touched my arm. "Right now your daughter needs you. That's what matters." But it wasn't what mattered to the billing department, was it? It wasn't what mattered when the collection notices started arriving, when they garnished my already pathetic paycheck, when I had to choose between electricity and groceries. I stayed with Emma as they moved her upstairs to the pediatric ward. The room was small but clean, with a window overlooking the parking lot and a reclining chair that converted into a bed. I settled Emma into the crib, watched her eyes flutter closed, her breathing even out into the soft rhythm of healing sleep. My phone was still dead. I should find a charger, call someone, let the world know where I was, but exhaustion pulled at me like an undertow, and the reclining chair looked impossibly inviting. Just for a minute, I told myself. Just until I could think straight again. I don't remember lying down, don't remember my eyes closing. But I must have, because the next thing I knew, someone was shaking my shoulder, and when I jerked awake, the sun was streaming through the window, and there was a man standing over me who definitely wasn't hospital staff, the linebacker from last night, the security guard who'd flanked Mr. Marchetti. "Ms. Reeves," he said, his voice surprisingly soft for someone his size. "Mr. Marchetti would like to speak with you." My heart kicked into overdrive, confusion and fear tangling together. "Who? Why would—" "Please." Not a request. "It's important." I looked at Emma, still sleeping peacefully, her fever clearly broken, Looked back at this mountain of a man who somehow knew my name, who'd found me in this hospital room, who worked for someone I didn't know and had never met. "I can't leave my daughter," I said, trying to sound firm instead of terrified. "She'll be watched." He gestured to the door, where a nurse I didn't recognize stood smiling pleasantly. "Mr. Marchetti insisted, "Your daughter will be perfectly safe." What choice did I have? This man could probably pick me up with one hand if he wanted to, and something about the way he said, "Mr. Marchetti insisted," suggested that refusing wasn't really an option being offered. I followed him into the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Still wearing yesterday's stained dress, my hair a disaster, my mouth tasting like something had died in it. We walked past the nurse's station, where the staff conspicuously didn't look at us, past other patient rooms, to an elevator that required a keycard to access. The doors opened on the top floor. The floor I'd heard other patients mention in jealous whispers, where the wealthy went to recover in something resembling hotel suites rather than hospital rooms. And there, at the end of a corridor that smelled like expensive flowers instead of antiseptic, stood a door flanked by the other security guard from last night. The linebacker knocked once, a voice from inside, low, controlled, absolutely confident, said something I couldn't make out. The door opened, and I stepped into whatever fresh hell my accidentally sent text message had created. The suite looked nothing like the hospital room where Emma slept 3 floors below. Hardwood floors, not linoleum. Crown molding instead of water-stained ceiling tiles. A massive window overlooking the city skyline. Dawn painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Leather furniture that probably cost more than my car. Fresh orchids in crystal vases. The kind of space that announced without words exactly how much money and power separated its occupant from the rest of humanity. He stood by the window, backlit by the rising sun, still wearing black but different clothes than last night. A sweater now. Cashmere probably, over dark slacks. Casual in a way that suggested he owned enough expensive things that wearing them was unremarkable. His hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but something about him radiated coiled tension, like a predator deciding whether to pounce or merely observe. "Ms. Reeves." He didn't turn around immediately. "Thank you for coming." As if I'd had a choice, as if his man hadn't escorted me here like a prisoner being delivered to the warden. I stayed near the door, hyper-aware of the security guard behind me, the one still outside. The fact that I was trapped in this beautiful cage with a stranger who somehow knew my name. "I don't understand," I said, hating how my voice shook. "Why am I here? How do you know who I am?" He turned then, and the full force of his attention hit me like a physical thing. Those dark eyes swept over me, cataloging, assessing, seeing far too much. I was suddenly conscious of every stain on my dress, every tangle in my hair, the fact that I probably smelled like fear and old coffee and desperation. "You sent me a message last night." He pulled a phone from his pocket, not the latest model, interestingly. Something older, more discreet. At 2:47 a.m., my stomach dropped. "No, I didn't. I sent a text to my friend Sarah." My phone died right after but even as I said it, understanding crashed over me. The contacts list swimming in my exhausted vision. My finger scrolling, selecting the wrong name. Sarah Brennan. Except it hadn't been Sarah I'd selected, had it? "Let me guess," he said, something that might have been amusement flickering across his face. "You thought you were texting someone else." I wanted to sink through the floor, wanted to rewind time, charge my phone properly, make literally any different choice than the one that had landed me here. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to bother you. I don't even know how I have your number, don't you?" He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate. Not threatening exactly, but commanding the space between us, erasing the distance I desperately wanted to maintain. "Think carefully, Natalie. When might someone have put my contact information in your phone, Natalie?" He'd used my first name, and hearing it in his voice, low, almost intimate, made something in my chest tighten. I forced myself to think, to push past the panic. When would someone have... The memory hit me like cold water. 6 months ago. Jake's friend Marcus, always showing up at our apartment with his expensive watch and his knowing smirks, talking about opportunities and connections. He'd grabbed my phone once, said he was putting his number in so I could reach him if I ever needed anything. I deleted it immediately, or thought I had. But what if he'd added other contacts too? What if this man, this Mr. Marchetti, was one of those contacts? Marcus, I whispered. Jake's friend Marcus. Something dark crossed Marchetti's face. Not anger, exactly, but something colder and infinitely more dangerous. Marcus Delano. Yes, he worked for me until he made certain choices that proved incompatible with continued employment. Worked for him. Past tense. And Jake's friend, which meant Jake had connections to whatever world this man inhabited. My ex, Emma's father, the man who'd walked out 2 months after she was born because fatherhood was too heavy and he had opportunities to explore. He'd been involved with someone like Marchetti. I didn't know, I said quickly. Jake never told me what Marcus did, what he was involved in. I had nothing to do with, I know. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and woody. Cedar maybe, mixed with something spicier. Expensive, like everything else about him. I had you investigated after I received your message. Thoroughly. Natalie Reeves, 23, works part-time at Morrison's Diner on 5th Street. Dropped out of community college when you got pregnant. Father is deceased, mother remarried and moved to Arizona. No siblings. No criminal record. No assets beyond a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a failing transmission. Rent on a studio apartment in Riverside is 3 months overdue. Credit score below 600. You are, by all accounts, exactly what you appear to be. A young mother struggling to survive. Each fact landed like a blow. The clinical recitation of my failures, my poverty, my absolute insignificance laid bare in his cultured voice. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. Then you know I'm nobody, I said, lifting my chin. I'm nobody important. I don't know anything about your business or Marcus or whatever Jake was involved in. So please, just let me go back to my daughter. I know you texted me by mistake, he said, ignoring my plea entirely. But I came anyway. Do you know why? I shook my head, mute. Because you said you were scared and alone. His eyes held mine, and there was something in them I couldn't name. Because you asked for help. And because Marcus Delano put my contact information in your phone for a reason, likely insurance against the day I discovered he was stealing from me. He thought if he gave you access to me, I might hesitate to act against him. He was wrong. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What happened to Marcus? Nothing you need to concern yourself with. He moved past me to a small bar cart, poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into a glass. Your ex-boyfriend, however, Jake Morrison. His situation is more complicated. Morrison. Not Reeves. Jake had never wanted to marry me, never even discussed it. And now hearing his last name in Marchetti's mouth, I realized I'd never known anything real about him at all. What about Jake? My voice came out smaller than I intended. He's been continuing Marcus's work. Less successfully, but with equal ambition. Marchetti took a sip of his drink, watching me over the rim. He owes me a considerable amount of money. Money he doesn't have and cannot repay. The floor tilted beneath me. I don't have anything to do with Jake anymore. He's Emma's father, but he left us. I haven't spoken to him in weeks, I know. Which is why when I received your message last night, a message clearly not intended for me, I made a decision. He set the glass down, moved toward me again, and this time I took a step back, my spine hitting the door. He stopped, giving me space but trapping me nonetheless. Jake Morrison's debt is approximately $370,000. His methods of repayment have been unsatisfactory. But you, Natalie, you've given me an idea. No. The word burst out of me. Whatever you're thinking, no. I don't have money. I can't pay Jake's debts. I can barely pay for my daughter's hospital stay. You already paid for it. He said it casually, as if it were nothing. Emma's bill has been settled. The hospital administrator was quite accommodating once I made it clear that her care was my personal interest. I stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. Why would you... I can't accept that. I don't even know you. You texted me for help. I helped. His head tilted slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he was working to solve. But there are conditions. Of course there were. Nothing was free, especially not help from men like this. Men who wore $1,000 suits and had people investigated and spoke about debt collection like it was weather small talk. What conditions? Jake Morrison believes you're still an asset to him. He's been telling people you might reconcile, that he has access to you, and by extension to your daughter. He's been using your name in ways I find troublesome. Nausea rolled through me. Jake, trading on our history, on Emma's existence, to buy himself time or credibility or whatever currency he needed in this dark world I'd never known existed. I want nothing to do with him, I said. He can tell people whatever he wants. It doesn't make it true. But perception matters in my business, Natalie. And right now, the perception is that Jake Morrison has connections and leverage that make him valuable alive. Marchetti's voice dropped lower, intimate and terrifying. I need to change that perception, which is where you come in. I don't understand. You will be seen with me, publicly. You and your daughter will move into a property I own. Nothing extravagant, but safe and comfortable. You will allow it to be known that you are under my protection. And Jake Morrison will understand, very clearly, that he has nothing left to bargain with. The words hung in the air between us like a suspended sentence. You want me to be what? Your girlfriend? My responsibility. He cut through my stammering. The woman who texted me in crisis and who I chose to help. Jake will interpret it however he likes, and that interpretation will serve my purposes. And if I say no? His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room's atmosphere. Then I handled Jake Morrison's debt, through more traditional channels. Channels that, while effective, tend to leave considerable collateral damage. Ex-girlfriends, children. People who got caught in proximity to bad decisions that weren't even theirs to make. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. But the implication sat heavy as a stone in my chest. I thought of Emma sleeping 3 floors down, her tiny hand curled into a fist, her fever finally broken. Thought of Jake's stupid choices becoming our nightmare. Thought of what men like Marchetti did to people who owed them money and couldn't pay. How long? I whispered. Until Jake's debt is resolved. One way or another. He reached out slowly, giving me time to flinch away, but I was frozen. His fingers brushed my cheek, tucking a strand of tangled hair behind my ear. The touch was gentle, almost tender, and somehow more frightening than any threat could have been. You'll want for nothing, Natalie. You and Emma will be safe, comfortable, cared for. All I ask is that you allow yourself to be seen at my side when necessary. And Emma? We'll have the best pediatric care money can buy. The best of everything. His hand dropped away, but I could still feel the ghost of his touch on my skin. Consider it an investment in her future. And yours. An investment. As if I were property, a chess piece to be moved around his board. But what choice did I have? Stay in my roach-infested studio, 3 months behind on rent, watching Emma grow up poor and struggling, or accept help from a dangerous man, and hope I could navigate whatever darkness came with it. I need to think, I said. Though we both knew that was a lie, there was nothing to think about. He'd already won. Of course. He stepped back, pulled a business card from his pocket. Not his number. I already had that, apparently, but an address. The apartment is in Riverview Heights, 3rd floor, Unit 312. The key will be at the front desk under your name. Move in whenever you're ready. My driver will collect you and Emma from the hospital this afternoon. I didn't say yes. You will. He said it with such certainty, such absolute confidence, that arguing seemed pointless. You texted me for help, Natalie. I'm offering it. What happens next is entirely up to you. The security guard opened the door behind me, and I understood I was being dismissed. I stumbled into the hallway, my legs shaking, the business card clutched in my hand like a talisman or a curse. I couldn't tell which. Back in the elevator, back down to Emma's floor, back to my daughter's room where she slept peacefully, completely unaware that her mother had just made a deal with the devil. The nurse from earlier smiled at me. Everything okay, honey? I nodded, not trusting my voice, and sank into the chair beside Emma's crib. My phone, Someone had plugged it in while I was gone, charged it back to life. Texts from Jake filled the screen. "Where the fuck are you? You better not be ignoring me. We need to talk about money, Nat." I know getting benefits for Emma. I deleted them all, every single one. Then I pulled up his contact and blocked his number. Outside the window, the city woke up around us. People going to work, to school, to ordinary lives full of ordinary problems. And here I sat, holding a business card for an apartment I hadn't agreed to take, making plans I hadn't agreed to make, all because I'd sent one desperate text message to the wrong person. Or maybe, I thought as I watched Emma sleep, exactly the right person, just not in any way I could have imagined. The apartment in Riverview Heights looked nothing like the cramped studio I'd called home for the past year. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the river, afternoon light spilling across hardwood floors that gleamed like honey. A kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that looked like they belonged in a magazine. 2 bedrooms, one already set up as a nursery, complete with a white crib, changing table, and shelves stocked with diapers, wipes, and baby supplies I could never have afforded. The living room held a cream-colored sofa, a coffee table made of reclaimed wood, and abstract art on the walls that was probably real and expensive. It was beautiful, pristine, a gilded cage with a view. Marchetti's driver, a quiet man named Vincent, who'd helped carry Emma's car seat and the pathetic garbage bag containing everything we owned, had left us 20 minutes ago. Now I stood in the middle of this perfect apartment, Emma drowsing against my shoulder, and tried not to think about what accepting all of this meant. The refrigerator was stocked. I'd checked, disbelieving, finding fresh produce, milk, eggs, chicken breasts, things I usually bought in their cheapest forms, or did without entirely. The pantry held pasta, rice, canned goods, baby formula, the expensive organic kind I'd stared at longingly in grocery stores. Someone had thought of everything, anticipated every need. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like drowning in velvet. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I trust the apartment is satisfactory. My assistant will contact you tomorrow regarding Emma's new pediatrician. Rest tonight. You've earned it." No signature, but I knew who it was from. That formal tone. The assumption that his arrangements would be perfect because he'd made them. I typed back quickly, my thumb hovering over the send button. "Thank you. But I need to know what you expect from me." The response came within seconds. "Patience, Natalie. We'll discuss expectations soon enough. For now, just settle in." I set the phone down, carried Emma to the nursery, and laid her in the crib that was nicer than any piece of furniture I'd ever owned. She sighed in her sleep, stretching her small arms above her head, completely at peace. At least one of us was. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. I didn't leave the apartment, didn't know if I was allowed to, or if someone would be watching, reporting my movements back to Marchetti. Groceries appeared at the door, delivered by the building's concierge, a woman named Margaret, who smiled warmly and never asked questions. Emma thrived in the air-conditioned comfort, her fever a distant memory, her appetite returning with a vengeance. I should have felt grateful, and part of me did. The part that remembered choosing between electricity and groceries, the part that had held my screaming daughter in a roach-infested apartment and wondered how I'd let our lives come to this. But another part, larger and louder, kept whispering that nothing was free. That every meal I ate, every soft surface Emma crawled across, was purchased with currency I didn't understand and couldn't repay. On the 4th morning, my phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call from that same unknown number. "Hello?" My voice came out uncertain. "Ms. Reeves." Not Marchetti. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "My name is Catherine Chen. I'm Mr. Marchetti's personal assistant. He's requested that you join him for dinner tomorrow evening at his home. A car will collect you at 7. "I don't have anyone to watch Emma," I said quickly. Too quickly, like I was making excuses. "Emma is invited as well, of course. Mr. Marchetti has arranged for a nanny to be present, a woman with impeccable credentials. But he'd like Emma there. He was quite specific about that." Of course he was. Because this wasn't just about me being seen with him. It was about Jake knowing that Emma, his daughter, was now under another man's protection. The message couldn't be clearer. What should I wear? The question felt absurd even as I asked it. As if I owned anything appropriate for dinner at the home of a man who probably had servants and crystal stemware and meals that cost more than my monthly income used to be. Something comfortable, Catherine said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Mr. Marchetti prefers informality at home, but if you'd like, I can arrange for a stylist to— No! The word came out sharper than intended. I'll manage. Thank you. I hung up before she could offer anything else, before the weight of obligation could settle any heavier on my shoulders. But after Emma went down for her nap, I stood in front of my meager collection of clothes and felt despair wash over me. Everything was wrong. Too worn, too cheap, too obviously from clearance racks and thrift stores. The nicest thing I owned was the black dress I'd worn to my father's funeral 3 years ago, and even that had a small stain on the hem I'd never managed to remove. The buzzer rang. I checked the video intercom and saw a woman standing in the hallway, holding several garment bags. Ms. Reeves? I'm from Bellissima. Ms. Chen sent me. I buzzed her in, fury and gratitude warring in my chest. Of course he'd anticipated this. Of course he'd known I'd have nothing suitable to wear. The woman, sleek, polished, wearing more confidence than I'd felt in my entire life, swept into the apartment with the garment bags and a smile that was probably meant to be reassuring. Mr. Marchetti wanted you to have options, she said, laying the bags across the sofa. Nothing too formal, but elegant, comfortable. I took the liberty of bringing several sizes based on the information Ms. Chen provided. Information. He'd had me measured somehow, probably from the hospital security footage or the investigation he'd run. Every detail catalogued, anticipated, controlled. The dresses were beautiful, simple but expensive, the kind of expensive that didn't need logos or obvious labels because the quality spoke for itself. Soft fabrics in muted colors, cuts that were modest but flattering. I wanted to refuse them all, to send this woman away and show up at his door in my funeral dress just to prove I couldn't be bought. But I thought of Emma, of the soft crib and the stocked pantry, and the fact that for the first time in months, I wasn't waking up in a panic about money. And I chose a dress. Dark green, knee-length, with 3/4 sleeves and a neckline that showed nothing but collarbones. Armor disguised as evening wear. The stylist left with a promise to return tomorrow afternoon to help with hair and makeup. I locked the door behind her and sank onto the sofa, surrounded by tissue paper and garment bags, feeling like I was being dressed for sacrifice. That night, I dreamed of my father. He'd been a good man, a construction worker who'd never made much money, but had always made sure I had what I needed. He'd died when I was 20, a heart attack on a job site, and I'd had to handle everything alone because my mother had already checked out emotionally, already planning her escape to Arizona with her new husband. In the dream, my father sat across from me at our old kitchen table and asked, "What are you doing, Natalie?" "Surviving," I told him. "Taking care of Emma the only way I can." "At what cost?" he asked, and I woke up with tears on my face and no answer to give. Vincent arrived at precisely 7 the next evening. I dressed carefully, the green dress, my hair pulled back in a simple twist, minimal makeup that the stylist had applied with expert hands. Emma wore a new outfit that had appeared mysteriously in her nursery, soft pink cotton with embroidered flowers. She babbled happily as Vincent helped me into the back of the black SUV, clearly pleased with the adventure. We drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city behind for the suburbs, then beyond the suburbs to where properties spread out with gates and long driveways, and the kind of privacy that only serious money could buy. The SUV turned onto a private road, passed through gates that opened automatically, and pulled up to a house that made me forget how to breathe. It wasn't a mansion, not in the ostentatious way I'd expected. Instead, it looked like something from an architectural magazine. Modern lines mixed with traditional stone, large windows glowing with warm light, surrounded by manicured grounds that suggested a full-time groundskeeping staff. Beautiful without being cold, impressive without screaming for attention. Vincent opened my door, helped me out while I juggled Emma and the diaper bag I'd insisted on bringing. The front door opened before we reached it, and there he was. Marchetti, wearing dark jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. More casual than I'd ever seen him, but somehow more dangerous too, like seeing a predator in its natural habitat instead of dressed for the hunt. His eyes found mine immediately, held them for a beat too long, then dropped to Emma. "Natalie," he said, my name a low rumble in his chest. "Thank you for coming. And this must be Emma." He moved closer, and I instinctively stepped back, holding Emma tighter. He noticed, of course he noticed, and stopped, raising his hands slightly in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt her," he said quietly. "Or you, despite what you might think of me." "I don't know what to think of you," I admitted. "I don't know anything about you except that you're dangerous, and you own me now." Something flashed across his face. Anger, maybe, or hurt, though that seemed impossible. "I don't own you. I'm helping you. By forcing me to be seen with you, by moving me into an apartment I didn't choose, by making decisions about my daughter's healthcare without asking me." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Months of helplessness finding a target. That's not help. That's control. "Yes," he said simply. "It is. Because control is what keeps you safe. Control is what keeps Jake Morrison and his bad decisions from destroying what's left of your life." He paused, his jaw tight. "You can hate me for it, Natalie, but you'll be safe while you do." Emma chose that moment to reach for him, her small hand opening and closing in that universal baby gesture of wanting. Marchetti looked at her, then at me, asking permission without words. I should have said no, should have held my daughter close and refused to let this dangerous stranger touch her. But Emma was smiling, fearless in the way only children can be. And some part of me was curious to see what he'd do. I shifted her toward him. He took her with surprising confidence, settling her against his hip like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Emma grabbed his collar, babbling happily, and I watched something soften in his expression. Something almost human beneath the cold control. "She's beautiful," he said. "She has your eyes. And her father's complete lack of survival instinct, apparently." The words came out bitter, watching my daughter coo at a man who probably had Jake's blood on his hands. Metaphorically, if not literally. Not lack of instinct, she knows I won't hurt her. His eyes met mine over Emma's head. Children always know. We stood there in his doorway, the three of us forming some perverse tableau of domesticity. And I wondered how my life had spiraled so completely out of my control. 4 days ago, I'd been drowning. Now I was being pulled under by a different kind of current entirely, one that wore expensive cologne and held my daughter like she was precious. "Come inside," Marchetti said finally. "Dinner is ready, and there's someone I'd like you to meet." He turned and walked into the house, still carrying Emma, leaving me to follow or flee. I followed. Because despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the helplessness, I wanted to see who else inhabited his world. The interior matched the exterior. Modern but warm, expensive but not ostentatious. We walked through a foyer with marble floors to a living room with comfortable furniture and a stone fireplace. Beyond that, a dining room with a table set for dinner and windows overlooking gardens lit by landscape lighting. A woman emerged from what was presumably the kitchen. 50s, gray hair pulled back neatly, wearing dark slacks and a cardigan. She smiled when she saw us, her expression genuinely warm. "You must be Natalie," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'm Maria. I help Mr. Marchetti with the house, and this angel must be Emma." Emma, the traitor, reached for Maria immediately. Marchetti handed her over without protest, and Maria cooed at her in what sounded like Italian, carrying her toward the kitchen with promises of something interesting to see, and suddenly, I was alone with him. "Maria's daughter is the nanny I mentioned," Marchetti said, moving toward the bar cart in the corner. "She'll be here shortly. Would you like something to drink? Water." My mouth was dry as desert sand. "Just water." He poured it from a crystal pitcher, added ice, brought it to me. Our fingers brushed as I took the glass, and I jerked back like I'd been burned. He noticed that too, noticed everything, filed it away in whatever mental catalog he kept of my reactions. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the sofa. "Please. You look like you're about to bolt. I'm thinking about it. Don't." He remained standing, watching me with that unnerving intensity. I understand this is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Jake Morrison needs to understand that you're no longer accessible to him, that Emma is protected. The only way to accomplish that is to make our association public and undeniable. So I'm bait, a message written in human form. You're under my protection, he corrected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. Do you know what Jake was doing for Marcus before Marcus died? What he's been doing since? I shook my head. Running drugs through the county hospital system. Using his connection to you, the mother of his child who works nearby, as cover, telling people you were his way in, his legitimacy. He's been trading on your name and Emma's existence for months. The water glass nearly slipped from my hand. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I know you didn't. But Jake's associates don't. And when Jake can't pay what he owes, they'll come looking for leverage. They'll come looking for you. His voice dropped lower, almost gentle despite the horror of what he was saying. I'm ensuring they never get that chance. By making me yours instead? The question came out as barely a whisper. By making it clear that you're no longer accessible for leverage, that touching you or Emma would mean war. He reached out slowly, giving me time to flinch away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear just like he had in the hospital. I don't share what's mine, Natalie, and I destroy anyone foolish enough to try taking it. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Maybe it did. But beneath the terror was something else. Something that felt dangerously like relief. Because for the first time in as long as I could remember, someone was standing between me and the world, promising that nothing would touch me, even if that someone was a monster. Dinner was surprisingly normal. Maria served pasta with homemade sauce, fresh bread, a salad with vegetables that tasted like they'd been picked that morning. The nanny, a young woman named Sophia, who was indeed Maria's daughter, entertained Emma in the living room, their laughter drifting through the open doorway. Marchetti ate across from me at the smaller table in the breakfast nook rather than the formal dining room, asking me questions about Emma's eating habits, her sleep schedule, whether she'd started teething yet, questions a father might ask, or a man genuinely interested in the child he'd suddenly acquired through the strangest circumstances imaginable. "Why are you doing this?" I asked finally, setting down my fork. The food was delicious, but I could barely taste it, really. Not the explanation about Jake or protection or sending messages. Why do you care what happens to me and Emma? He was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. You texted me asking for help. You were scared and alone with a sick child at 3 a.m. And instead of asking for money or trying to manipulate me, instead of doing what most people in your position would do, you were just honest, vulnerable, real. He looked up, his dark eyes finding mine. Do you know how rare that is in my world? So I'm what? A novelty? A charity project to make you feel human? Maybe. His honesty surprised me. Or maybe I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only see me as what I can do for them, what I can give them, what they can take. He leaned back in his chair, the lamplight casting shadows across his sharp features. You didn't even know who I was. You just needed help, and you reached out to what you thought was a friend. There was no agenda, no calculation, just desperation and hope that someone might care, and that makes me special somehow. It makes you different. He paused. My mother died when I was young, cancer. My father raised me alone in this business, taught me that trust is a luxury we can't afford, that everyone wants something. He was right, mostly, but sometimes I wonder what life might have been like if he'd been wrong. If there were still people in the world who could be honest without expecting something in return. The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. For a moment, he wasn't the dangerous man who'd investigated me and moved me into his apartment like a chess piece. He was just someone who'd lost his mother too young and learned all the wrong lessons about trust. I'm not that person, I said quietly. I'm taking your help because I'm desperate and scared, and I don't know what else to do. That's not honesty. That's survival. At least you admit it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Most people would pretend otherwise. would perform gratitude while plotting how to extract more. You're just direct. We finished eating in silence, broken only by Emma's happy babbling from the other room. Maria brought coffee, and something she called tiramisu, that melted on my tongue like a sweet, coffee-flavored dream. Normal. Domestic. As if we were a real couple having a real dinner instead of two strangers bound by accident and desperation. After dinner, Marchetti led me to his study, all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves that climbed to the ceiling and a massive desk that probably cost more than my old apartment. He pulled a folder from a drawer, slid it across the desk toward me. "What's this?" "Information on Jake's activities over the past 6 months, his associates, his debts. The people who might come looking if I don't make my position clear." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "I want you to understand what you're dealing with, what I'm protecting you from." I opened the folder with trembling hands. Photographs. Jake with men I didn't recognize. Outside buildings I'd never seen. Financial records showing transactions that made my head spin. Transcripts of conversations mentioning my name, Emma's name, our address. My stomach turned reading Jake's voice in black and white. "Natalie's solid. She won't talk. And if things get tight, the kid gives me insurance." Insurance. He'd been using Emma, his own daughter, as insurance against his own bad decisions. He was going to use her. My voice came out hollow. He was going to use our baby as leverage if things went wrong. "Yes." Marchetti's expression was granite. "Which is why you're here. Why this arrangement is necessary. Jake needs to understand that Emma is no longer his insurance policy. That you're both beyond his reach." I closed the folder, unable to look at it anymore. What happens to him? To Jake? That depends on him. If he's smart, he'll find a way to settle his debt and disappear. If he's not... Marchetti trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. "Either way, he won't come near you or Emma again. I'll make certain of that. By making me your..." I couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know what word to use. Girlfriend? Property? Project? "By making it known that you're under my protection," he finished for me. "We'll be seen together. A few public appearances, nothing uncomfortable. A charity gala next week, dinner at Giovanni's, places where the right people will notice and report back. Within a month, everyone who matters will know that you're connected to me. And that connection will keep you safer than any bodyguard could. And after that, when Jake's debt is settled or he's dealt with..." Marchetti pushed off from the desk, moving around it until he was standing directly in front of me. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, smell that cedar and spice cologne that was becoming familiar. "After that," he said quietly, "you're free to go. Back to your life, your apartment. I'll ensure it's somewhere safe, somewhere better than where you were. Emma will have a trust fund set up for her education and future. You'll never have to worry about money again. All I ask is that you play this role convincingly until the threat is neutralized." It sounded so reasonable, so simple. A few weeks of pretending in exchange for safety and security and a future for Emma. But nothing about this man was simple, and I could see in his eyes that there was more he wasn't saying. "What aren't you telling me?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You're perceptive." "I'm desperate. It makes you pay attention. Fair enough." He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. I should have pulled away, should have maintained distance, but I was frozen, trapped in his gaze like a rabbit before a wolf. "The truth is, Natalie, I don't know if I'll be able to let you go when this is over. You and Emma have already become more important to me than they should be. More real than anything in my life has been in years." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You don't even know me. I know you're a good mother. I know you're stubborn and scared and trying to survive the best way you can. I know you dropped out of college to raise a baby alone because the father was too much of a coward to stay. I know you work 12-hour shifts at a diner that doesn't pay enough and come home to an apartment with cockroaches because it's all you can afford. I know you've been drowning, and you're still fighting, still trying to keep Emma safe and happy despite everything." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. "That's enough. That's more than enough. This is insane," I whispered. You're talking about keeping me like I'm something you can own. I'm talking about giving you a choice." His hand dropped away, and I could breathe again. "Stay with me. Let me take care of you and Emma, not as a possession or a project, but as someone I—" He stopped, shook his head. "Just consider it. That's all I'm asking." Before I could respond, Emma's cry echoed from the living room, not distressed, just tired and ready for her mother. I seized the excuse gratefully, escaping the study and Marchetti's impossible words. Sophia had Emma on her hip, bouncing her gently. "I think someone's ready for bed," she said with a knowing smile. I took Emma, buried my face in her baby shampoo scent, and tried to remember who I was before a mistaken text message had turned my life into something I no longer recognized. The drive back to the apartment was quiet. Marchetti insisted on accompanying us despite Vincent's presence, sitting across from me in the SUV's back seat while Emma dozed against my shoulder. He didn't try to talk, just watched us with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. At the apartment, he walked us to the door, watched while I fumbled with the key, waited while I got Emma settled in her crib. When I emerged from the nursery, he was standing by the windows overlooking the river, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city lights. "Thank you for dinner," I said, because someone had to break the silence. "Thank you for coming." He turned to face me. "The gala is Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Catherine will arrange everything you need." "I'm not ready for this. No one ever is." He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "But you'll do fine. You're stronger than you think, Natalie. Stronger than you give yourself credit for." He left before I could respond, and I stood alone in my borrowed apartment, watching the river flow past outside and wondering how much of myself I was willing to sacrifice for safety. The week passed in a blur of preparations. Catherine sent a stylist, a makeup artist, someone to teach me basic social etiquette for high society events. I learned which fork to use, how to make small talk, how to smile and nod while feeling like an imposter in expensive clothes. Emma thrived under Sophia's care during these sessions, the young woman becoming a fixture in our days. Jake called 3 times. I let them all go to voicemail, listened to his increasingly desperate messages, asking where I was, why I'd moved, demanding to see Emma. The 3rd message was different, scared instead of angry. "Nat, please, I heard you're with him. With Marchetti. You don't understand what you're doing. He's dangerous. Call me back. Please." I deleted them all and tried not to think about what it meant that Jake knew where I was, who I was with. Tried not to wonder if Marchetti had made sure he knew, if that was the point. Saturday arrived too quickly. The dress Catherine sent was stunning. Midnight blue, floor length, with a neckline that showed collarbones, and the barest hint of cleavage. Elegant without being revealing. The kind of dress that cost more than I used to make in 6 months. Sophia arrived to watch Emma, assuring me she'd be fine, that I looked beautiful, that Mr. Marchetti was a lucky man. Lucky. As if this were real, as if we were anything other than a dangerous man and a desperate woman playing pretend for an audience that could destroy us both. Vincent collected me at 7 sharp. The drive to the gala venue, some historic hotel downtown with chandeliers and marble columns, took 30 minutes. With each passing mile, my anxiety ratcheted higher. This was real. This was happening. I was about to walk into a room full of the wealthy and powerful on the arm of a man everyone seemed to fear, pretending to be something I wasn't. The SUV pulled up to the entrance, where other cars were disgorging women in designer gowns and men in expensive tuxedos. Vincent opened my door, and I stepped out into camera flashes and curious stares, wondering if anyone could see through the facade to the terrified girl beneath. Then Marchetti was there, appearing at my side like he'd been waiting. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a Hollywood film, all sharp lines and dangerous elegance. His hand found the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my dress, possessive and protective in equal measure. "Breathe," he murmured against my ear. "You look perfect. I look like I'm about to throw up." "Even better. Fear makes you human. They'll eat it up." His hand pressed more firmly against my back, guiding me forward. "Stay close to me. Don't answer questions about us directly. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, squeeze my hand twice. I'll handle it. We climbed the steps together, and I felt every eye in the vicinity tracking our movement. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. That's Marchetti. Who's the girl? Never seen her before. Pretty. Young. Where did he find her? Inside, the ballroom was everything I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, a string quartet playing something classical, waiters circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than my old daily food budget. Everywhere I looked, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the kind of casual wealth that had never even brushed against my existence before. Marchetti kept me close, his hand never leaving my back or waist, introducing me to people whose names I immediately forgot. Business associates, politicians, society figures. Everyone smiled at me with curiosity poorly hidden behind politeness, their eyes cataloging my dress, my shoes, trying to place me in whatever mental hierarchy they maintained. And who is this lovely creature, Alessandro? A woman in her 60s, dripping diamonds, smiled at me with sharp interest. I don't believe we've met. Mrs. Vanderbilt, this is Natalie Reeves. Marchetti's voice held warmth I'd never heard before, though his hand tightened possessively on my waist. Natalie, Mrs. Vanderbilt is one of the gala's primary sponsors. It's wonderful to meet you, I said, trying to remember Catherine's coaching about eye contact and genuine smiles. Reeves, Mrs. Vanderbilt repeated thoughtfully. I don't know that family. Are you local, dear? The question held layers of meaning I barely understood, asking about my background, my pedigree, whether I belonged in this world. Marchetti's hand moved in small circles against my waist, reassurance or warning, I couldn't tell. I grew up here, yes, I said carefully. Though I'm sure our circles haven't crossed before tonight. How did you and Alessandro meet? Her eyes gleamed with predatory curiosity. Through mutual acquaintances, Marchetti answered before I could. Sometimes the universe arranges meetings when we need them most. Wouldn't you agree? Mrs. Vanderbilt laughed, charmed, and moved on to her next target. I sagged slightly against Marchetti's side, relief making my knees weak. You did well, he murmured. But we've only just begun. The evening stretched endlessly. We moved through the ballroom like dancers in some elaborate performance, Marchetti introducing me, his hand always on me somewhere, claiming me in ways both subtle and obvious. I smiled until my face ached, made small talk until the words blurred together, and tried not to think about how many people were watching, judging, reporting back to whoever cared about Alessandro Marchetti's personal life. Around 10, Marchetti excused us from a conversation with a city councilman and his wife, guiding me toward the terrace. The cool night air hit my overheated skin like a blessing. I leaned against the stone railing, staring out at the city lights below, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. You're doing better than I expected, Marchetti said, coming to stand beside me. Close, but not touching, giving me space for the first time all evening. I feel like a circus animal, performing on command. Welcome to my world. He pulled a silver case from his jacket, extracted a cigarette, then seemed to think better of it, and put it away. I grew up in rooms like this, learning to smile at people I despised, to make conversation that meant nothing, to play whatever role was required. You get used to it. I don't want to get used to it. I turned to face him. This isn't me, Alessandro. This dress, this event, pretending to be someone who belongs in your life, it's all just costume and lies. Is it? He moved closer, his dark eyes searching mine. Or are you just discovering parts of yourself you didn't know existed? You handle these people better than you think. You're smart, observant, adaptable. You just never had reason to use those skills before, because I was too busy trying to survive. And now you're not. Now you have room to breathe, to think, to be more than just a mother struggling to make rent. His hand came up, cupping my face with that same gentle possession that both terrified and comforted me. I know you hate this, hate me maybe, for forcing you into it. But can you honestly say your life is worse now than it was 2 weeks ago? I wanted to say yes, wanted to insist that freedom and poverty were better than this gilded captivity. But Emma's face flashed through my mind, happy, healthy, thriving. No more roaches, No more wondering if I could afford formula. No more lying awake, calculating which bill I could skip to keep the lights on. That's not fair, I whispered. No. But it's honest. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. I'm not a good man, Natalie. I've done terrible things to people who crossed me. I'll do more terrible things before this is over. But I protect what's mine, and whether you want to admit it or not, you and Emma are mine now. We're not things to be owned. No. You're people to be cherished, protected, cared for. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. Let me do that. Let me give you the life you deserve. In exchange for what? My freedom? My soul? In exchange for letting me be part of your life? For not running the moment I give you the chance? His voice dropped lower, intimate and raw. I haven't felt human in years, Natalie. Haven't cared about anyone or anything beyond business and survival. And then you sent me that text, this desperate plea for help from a woman I'd never met, and something in me woke up, something I thought I'd buried with my mother. I'm not your redemption story, I know. But maybe you're my second chance. His lips were so close now, hovering just above mine. Tell me you don't feel this pull between us. Tell me it's just fear and obligation, and I'll back off. I'll keep my promise. Keep you safe until Jake is dealt with. Then let you go. But if there's even a chance you feel what I feel... A commotion inside cut him off. Raised voices, the sound of something breaking. Marchetti's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, from vulnerable man to dangerous predator, his hand moving inside his jacket where I knew he kept a gun. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the ballroom. But I followed anyway, fear overriding obedience. Inside, a crowd had gathered near the entrance. Through the press of bodies, I caught glimpses of the scene unfolding. 2 of Marchetti's security guards restraining someone, hotel security hovering nearby, guests backing away from the disturbance. Then I saw who they were restraining, and my blood turned to ice. Jake. He looked terrible. Gaunt, wild-eyed, his clothes wrinkled and stained. Nothing like the charming man I'd fallen for 2 years ago. He struggled against the guards, his voice rising desperately. Natalie. Nat, I know you're here. You need to listen to me. He's going to kill me. You're signing my death warrant by being with him. Marchetti reached the guards, spoke to them in a low voice I couldn't hear. But Jake saw him, and something like terror crossed his face. Please, Jake begged. And it was horrible hearing him reduced to this broken, desperate thing. Please, I'll do anything. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. Just don't... His eyes found mine through the crowd. Nat, tell him. Tell him about Emma. Tell him I'm her father. He can't... Get him out of here, Marchetti said, his voice arctic. Now. The guards dragged Jake toward a side exit, his protests fading as they disappeared through the door. The crowd slowly dispersed, conversations resuming with forced normalcy. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew now that there was history, complication, drama. Marchetti returned to me, his expression unreadable. We're leaving. Alessandro. Now Natalie. Not a request. Vincent had the SUV waiting at a side entrance. Marchetti ushered me inside, his hand on my elbow firm but not cruel. We pulled away from the hotel, and I watched the city lights blur past the window, my mind racing. What's going to happen to him? I asked finally. To Jake. Nothing tonight. He'll be released once he calms down. Marchetti's jaw was tight, but he made a very public mistake. Used Emma as leverage. Tried to manipulate you in front of witnesses. That changes things. What kind of things? He was quiet for a long moment. Originally, I was willing to give him a chance to pay his debt, work it off, disappear. But now he's made this personal, made it about you and Emma, that I can't allow. The implication hung between us like a death sentence. I thought about Jake. Stupid, selfish Jake, who'd gotten himself into this mess but who was still Emma's father. Still the man I'd loved once, before he'd shown me who he really was. Don't kill him, I heard myself say. Please. Not for me. Not for this. Marchetti turned to look at me, his dark eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. You still care about him. I care that Emma might grow up asking about her father, and I'll have to tell her he died because of me. Because I sent a text message to the wrong person, and everything spiraled from there. Tears burned my eyes. I can't carry that, Alessandro. Please don't make me carry that. He studied me for what felt like eternity. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in rapid Italian too quick for me to follow. When he hung up, he reached across the seat and took my hand. He lives, he said simply, but he leaves. Tonight. Out of the city, out of the state, as far as my people can send him. He contacts you or Emma again, even once, and the deal is off. Understood? Relief and guilt warred in my chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this out of mercy. His grip on my hand tightened. I'm doing it because you asked. Because making you happy matters more to me than revenge. Do you understand what that means? I thought I did. Thought I understood the gift he was giving me. Not Jake's life, but proof that my voice mattered, that I had power in this relationship, even if it was power granted rather than earned. At the apartment, Sophia reported that Emma had been perfect all evening, sleeping peacefully since 8. Marchetti paid her, thanked her, waited until she'd left before turning to me. I should go, he said. Let you rest. It's been a long night. But he didn't move toward the door, and I didn't ask him to. We stood in my living room. His living room, technically, since he owned this place, and something shifted between us. The performance was over. The masks had come off. Whatever happened next would be real, for better or worse. Stay, I heard myself say. Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone. He moved closer, his hand finding my waist, pulling me against him. Natalie, I know what you are. I know this is probably the worst decision I could make, but I'm tired of being alone, tired of being scared, tired of pretending I don't feel something when you're near me. What do you feel? His voice was rough, need and restraint battling in his eyes. Safe. Seen. Like I matter to someone for the first time in years. I reached up, my hand touching his jaw, feeling the slight stubble there, like maybe I'm not just surviving anymore. Like maybe I could actually live. He kissed me then. Not gentle, but not demanding either. Acclaiming that asked for surrender while offering protection, his hands tangled in my hair, careful of the elaborate style, and I melted against him, letting myself feel for the first time since Emma was born, letting myself want something beyond basic survival. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I meant what I said, he murmured. About not being able to let you go. About you and Emma being mine, I know. And you're still here. I'm still here. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I need you to understand something, Alessandro. I'm not staying because I'm trapped or afraid, or because I have no other choice. I'm staying because I'm choosing to. Because despite everything, despite how we started, despite what you are, I want to see where this goes, but the moment I stop wanting it, the moment I feel like I'm a possession instead of a partner, I'm gone. Do you understand? He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I understand, and I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice. You better. I managed a shaky smile because I'm trusting you with everything that matters. My daughter, my future, my heart. Eventually, if you don't screw this up, high stakes. The highest. I kissed him again, softer this time. Now stay. Watch a terrible movie with me. Be normal for a few hours. Can you do that? I can try. We ended up on the couch, my head on his shoulder, watching some action film neither of us paid attention to. His arm around me felt right in a way I hadn't expected, solid and warm and safe. I thought about Jake, hopefully on a bus heading far away from the consequences of his choices. Thought about Emma sleeping peacefully in the next room, her future secure in ways I could never have provided alone. Thought about the man beside me, dangerous, powerful, possessive, who'd somehow become my protector and maybe, eventually, something more. Life had a strange way of working out. A mistaken text message sent in desperation had led me here, to safety, to stability, to the possibility of something real with someone impossible. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, wasn't the fairy tale ending movies promised. But it was mine, built from broken pieces and bad decisions, and one moment of accidental honesty. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. 3 months later, I stood in Marchetti's kitchen, our kitchen now, since I'd officially moved into his house, making breakfast while Emma babbled in her high chair. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching on the diamond ring that had appeared on my finger 2 weeks ago. Not an engagement ring, Alessandro had explained, just a promise. A symbol that this was real, that we were building something together. He appeared in the doorway, still in pajama pants, his hair mussed from sleep, the dangerous crime boss transformed into something softer, more human. He kissed Emma's head, then mine, and stole a piece of bacon from the pan. "Maria called," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "She wants to know if we're coming for Sunday dinner." "We should. Emma loves seeing Sophia, and you love Maria's cooking." Guilty. I leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. "Jake called yesterday, from Montana." Alessandro tensed slightly. What did he want? "To talk to Emma." I let him on video call. He looked better, sober, working construction. "He thanked me for convincing you to let him live." I turned in his arms. He knows he can never come back. Knows that Emma's life is here now, with us. But he wanted to say he was proud of me. For surviving. For finding someone who treats us right. Generous of him. It was, actually. I touched Alessandro's face, this man who'd become my everything through the strangest circumstances. "We're happy, aren't we? This isn't just me pretending anymore. We're happy," he confirmed, kissing me softly. "And if you're pretending, you're the best actress I've ever seen." "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Neither am I." Emma banged her hands on the high chair tray, demanding attention, and we both laughed. Alessandro lifted her into his arms, and I watched them together, the innocent child and the dangerous man who'd become her fiercest protector. My family, forged from mistakes and miracles, and one desperate text message sent to the wrong number. Life wasn't perfect. Alessandro's business still kept him out late sometimes, brought dangerous men to our door, required vigilance and security I was still learning to accept. But Emma was thriving. I'd started online classes again, working toward the degree I'd abandoned. And every night, I fell asleep next to someone who'd promised to protect me, to care for me, to never let the world touch us again. The text I'd sent by mistake had saved us, had led us here, to this moment, to this life I never could have imagined. And as I stood in that sun-filled kitchen, watching Alessandro play with Emma while bacon sizzled on the stove, I finally understood what it meant to be truly safe. Not because I was hiding from the world, but because I'd found someone willing to stand between me and anything that threatened our happiness, someone who'd turned a mistake into a miracle, someone who'd made me believe in second chances. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it, smiled, and deleted it without responding. Just a marketing message, nothing important, because I'd learned my lesson about mistaken text messages, and this time, I'd sent mine to exactly the right person after all.